A Ghost Story is, in my opinion, a masterpiece and an amazing portrayal of moving on from death. This movie came out in 2017, and despite the title, it is very much a drama and not a horror movie. It is one of the saddest movies I have ever watched, and it has one of the most uncomfortable scenes I've watched. So, if you don't know, this movie is about a deceased man, played by Casey Affleck, who comes back as a ghost that looks like a kid's Halloween costume. This man had a wife, played by Rooney Mara, who he now spectates and watches as she goes about her day-to-day life. This movie is shot in a 1.331 aspect ratio, which I'm always a fan of, especially when it's meaningful. For this movie in particular, the aspect ratio gives a sense of claustrophobia and entrapment, which is fitting as the majority of the movie is spent in this house. Alright, I'm going to get into spoiler territory now. If you haven't seen this movie, I would really recommend you go watch it, and come back to this video when you are done. Now, in the cast list, Rooney Mara's character is named M, and Casey Affleck's character is named C, so that is what I'm going to call them. One of the reasons this movie is so unbelievably sad is because we get a close and personal look at the grieving process. In that uncomfortable scene I mentioned earlier, we watch as M almost eats this whole pie before running into the bathroom to throw up. It's a scene that lasts around 4 minutes, and it honestly feels like we shouldn't be watching it, as if we are intruding on M due to how realistic and raw the scene is. This sets up the rest of the movie really well, as this feeling will not leave the viewer. A little later, we see a scene where C interacts with another ghost who is waiting for someone, but it has been so long that they forget who. Eventually, we will see this ghost again and find out how they moved on from this person. Like the pie scene, another scene that tackles the grieving process extremely well is one where we are shown a flashback where C is introducing a song he likes to M. Also, a side note, I had no idea the song existed, and now that I do, it has been on repeat. I love it so much. For anyone who doesn't know, it's called I Get Overwhelmed by Dark Rooms. Anyway, the music starts to play, and soon enough we cut back to the present, where we are shown M listening to the same song. Her hand reaches up, and we can see that she almost touches C in his ghost form, who is simply a passive viewer to this. I'm sure almost everyone can relate to having memories attached to music. You may listen back on a song and feel a variety of emotions, whether that be nostalgia, happiness, or sadness based on that point of your life when you listen to the song. This scene is probably one of the most emotional for me personally, as music and memories are simultaneous for me, and I'm sure they are for a lot of other people too. Eventually, M moves out of the house, and we are left wondering if C will become like that ghost earlier, just stuck in the house waiting for M to come back when she never will. Before M leaves, she makes a note on a piece of paper and hides it in the wall. A new family moves into the house, and C is not happy about this. His breaking point is when he notices the family's photo has replaced his photo with M. He knocks the photo over and starts to cause chaos in the kitchen. I really like this perspective on paranormal activity. Instead of being framed as demonic or satanic, we understand where C is coming from and his frustrations, while still being sympathetic to this poor family who are probably scarred for life now. Now, in the next scene, which takes place at a party that is happening in this house, they lost me just a little bit. This guy in overalls starts going on this whole tangent, which basically spells out the movie. I think what this scene does accomplish is making it clearer what a later plot point means, but it's just so on the nose, and I feel it could have at least been a little shorter. Anyway, this overall guy keeps talking and talking about how eventually the universe will die and everything will restart and how nothing matters. And I get it, okay, I understand. Moving on, eventually the house gets destroyed, and so does the house of the other ghosts C met earlier. The ghost tells C, "I don't think they're coming," and disappears, finally admitting and accepting this fact, which finds him closure, permitting him to move on. C, however, has not found this yet. Time starts to pick up, as eventually there is a whole building where the house used to be. C jumps off this building, wanting to leave this world, knowing that the life he knew is not going to come back. And then we restart. In a later scene, we are shown C back in the house. Now, I've seen a theory that C went back in time, but I think with the context of the overall guy scene earlier, he lived long enough to see the universe die and restart. We see C and M enter the house, and just like before, C dies and becomes a ghost. So now we have two ghosts in the house. The movie ends with C finally getting the piece of paper M left out of the wall, reading whatever she wrote, and moving on just as the other ghost did. I believe this note said something to the extent of "I'm not coming back," as the ghost earlier moved on from that realization. This movie is absolutely amazing at portraying existentialism, death, and grief, and just life in general. I know a lot of people may think it's pretentious, but I did not get that impression at all. Let me know your interpretation and what you thought of the movie in the comments, and see you next time.